Minotaur. Each morning I took ancient Greek from Annabeth, and we talked about gods and goddesses in the present tense, which was kind of weird. I discovered Annabeth was right about my dyslexia. Ancient Greek wasn't that hard for me to read, at least no harder than English. After a couple of mornings, I could stumble through a few lines of Homer without too much headache. The rest of the day I'd rotate through outdoor activities looking for something I was good at. Chiron tried to teach me archery, but we found out pretty quick I wasn't even good with a bow and arrow. He didn't even complain, even when he had to snag a stray arrow out of his tail. But racing, no good either. The wood nymph instructions left me in the dust. They told me not to worry about it. They'd had centuries of practice running away from the lovesick gods. But still, it was a little humiliating to be slower than a tree. And wrestling, forget it. Every time I got on that mat, Clarice would pulverize me. There's more where that came from, punk, she'd mumble in my ear. The only thing I really excelled at was canoeing, and that wasn't the kind of heroic skill people expected to see from the kid who had beaten the Minotaur. I knew the senior campers and counselors were watching me, trying to decide who my dad was, but they weren't having an easy time of it. I was as strong as the Aries kid. It wasn't as strong as the Aries kids or as good at archery as the Apollo kids. I didn't have Hephaestus' skill of metalwork or the gods forbid Dionysus' way with divine plants. Luke told me I might be a child of Hermes, a kind of jack of all trades, master of none. But I got the feeling he was trying to make me feel better. He really didn't know what to make of me either. Despite all that, I liked to camp. I got used to the morning fog over the beach, the smell of hot strawberry fields in the afternoon, even the weird noises of monsters in the woods at night. I'd eat dinner in cabin 11, scrape part of my meal into the fire, and try to feel some connection to my real dad. Nothing came, just the warm feeling I'd always had, like the memory of his smile. I tried not to think too much about my mom, but I kept wondering if gods and monsters were real. If all this magical stuff was possible, surely there was some way to save her, to bring her back. I started to understand Luke's bitterness and how he seemed to resent his father, Hermes. So, okay, maybe gods had important things to do, but couldn't they call in once in a while, or thunder, or something? Dionysus could make Diet Coke appear out of thin air. Why couldn't my dad, whoever he was, make a phone appear? Thursday afternoon, 3 days after I arrived at Camp Half-Blood, I had my first sword fighting lesson. Everybody from Camp 11 gathered in the big circular arena where Luke would be our instructor. We started with basic stabbing and slashing, using some straw-stuffed dummies in Greek armor. I guess I did okay. At least I understood what I was supposed to do with my reflexes, and they were good. The problem was I couldn't find a blade that felt right in my hands. Either they were too heavy, or too light, or too long. Luke tried his best to fix me up, but he agreed that none of the practice blades seemed to work for me. We moved on to dueling in pairs. Luke announced he would be a good partner since this was my first time. Good luck, one of the campers told me. Luke's the best swordsman in 300 years. Maybe he'll go easy on me, I said. The camper snorted. Luke showed me thrusts and parries and shield blocks the hard way. With every swipe, I got a little more battered and bruised. Keep your guard up, Percy, he'd say, then whap me in the ribs with the flat of his blade. No, not that far up. Whap, lunge, whap, now back, whap. By the time he called a break, I was soaked in sweat. Everybody swarmed to the drink cooler. Luke poured iced water on his head, which looked like a good idea, so I did the same. Instantly, I felt better. Strength surged into my back arms. The sword didn't feel so awkward. Okay, everybody, circle up, Luke ordered. If Percy doesn't mind, I want to give you a little demo. Great, I thought. Let's watch Percy get pounded. The Hermes guys gathered around. They were suppressing smiles. I figured they'd been in my shoes before and couldn't wait to see how Luke used me for a punching bag. He told everybody he was going to demonstrate a disarming technique. How to twist the enemy's blade with the flat of your own sword so that they had no choice but to drop their weapon. This is difficult, he stressed. I've had it used against me. No laughing at Percy now. Most swordsmen have to work years to master this technique. He demonstrated the move on me in slow motion. Sure enough, the sword clattered out of my hand. Now in real time, he said, after I retrieved my weapon, we keep sparring until one of us pulls it off. Ready, Percy? I nodded, and Luke came after me. Somehow I kept him from getting a shot at the hilt of my sword. My senses opened up. I saw his attacks coming. I countered. I stepped forward and tried to thrust my own. Luke deflected it easily, but I saw a change in his face. His eyes narrowed, and he started to press me with more force. The sword grew heavy in my hand. The balance wasn't right. I knew it was only a matter of seconds before Luke took me down, so I figured, what the heck? I tried the disarming maneuver. My blade hit the base of Luke's, and I twisted, putting my whole weight into the downward thrust. Clang. Luke's sword rattled against the stones. The tip of my blade was an inch from his undefended chest. The other campers were silent. I lowered my sword. Sorry. For a moment, Luke was too stunned to speak. Sorry. His scarred face looked up at me into a grin. By the gods, Percy, why are you sorry? Show me the gun. I didn't want to. The short burst of manic energy had completely abandoned me, but Luke insisted. But this time there was no contest. The moment our swords connected, Luke hit my hilt and sent my weapon skidding across the floor. After a long pause, somebody in the audience said, "Beginner's luck?" Luke wiped the sweat off his brow. He appraised at me with an entirely new interest. Maybe, he said, but I wonder what Percy could do with a balanced sword. Friday afternoon, I was sitting with Grover at the lake, resting from a near-death experience on the climbing wall. Grover had scampered to the top like a mountain goat. The lava had almost gotten me. My shirt had smoking holes in it. The hairs had been singed off my forearms. We sat on the pier watching the natives do the underwater basket weaving, until I got the nerve to ask Grover how his conversation had gone with Mr. D. His face turned a sickly shade of yellow. Fine, he said, just great. So your career's on track? He glanced at me nervously. Sharon told you I want a searcher's license? Well, no. I had no idea what a searcher's license was, but it didn't seem like the right time to ask. He just said you had big plans, that you needed credit for completing a keeper's assignment, so did you get it? Grover looked down at the natives. Mr. D suspended judgment. He said I hadn't failed or succeeded with you yet, so our fates were still tied together. If you got a quest and I was sent along to protect you, and we both came back alive, then maybe he'd consider the job complete. My spirits lifted. Well, that's not so bad, right? Blah! You might as well have transferred me to a stable cleaning duty. The chances of you getting a quest, and if you did, why would you want me along? Of course I'd want you along. Grover stared glumly at the water. Basket weaving must be a nice, useful skill. I tried to reassure him that he had lots of talents, but that just made him look more miserable. We talked about canoeing and swordplay for a while, and then debated the pros and cons of different gods. Finally, I asked him about the 4 empty cabins. Number 8, the silver one, belongs to Artemis, he said. She vowed to be a maiden forever. So of course no kids. The cabin is, honorary. If she didn't have one, she'd be mad. Yeah, okay. But what about the other 3, the ones at the end? Are those the big 3? Grover tensed. We're getting close to a touchy subject. No. One of them, number 2, is Hera's. That's another honorary thing. She's the goddess of marriage, so of course she wouldn't go around having affairs with mortals. That's her husband's job. When we say big 3, we mean the 3 powerful brothers, the sons of Kronos. Zeus, Poseidon, Hades? Right. After the battle with the Titans, they took over the world from their dad and drew lots to decide from who got what. Zeus got the sky, I remembered. Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld. Uh-huh. But Hades doesn't have a cabin here. No. He doesn't have a throne on Olympus either. He sort of does his own thing down in the underworld. If he did have a cabin here, Grover shuddered, well, it wouldn't be pleasant. Let's leave it at that. But Zeus and Poseidon, they both had a bazillion kids in the mess. Why are their cabins empty? Grover shifted his host uncomfortably. About 60 years ago, after World War II, the big 3 agreed they wouldn't sire any more heroes. Their children were just too powerful. They were affecting the course of human events too much, causing too much carnage. World War II, that was basically a fight between the sons of Zeus and Poseidon on one side, sons of Hades on the other. The Inside, Zeus and Poseidon made Hades swear on the oath that no more affairs with mortal women. They all swore on the river Styx. Thunder boomed. I said, "That's the most serious oath you can make." Grover nodded. And the brothers kept their word. No kids? Grover's face darkened. 17 years ago, Zeus fell off the wagon. There was a TV starlet with this big fluffy 80s hairdo. He just couldn't stop himself. When their child was born, a little girl named Thalia, while the river Styx is serious about promises, Zeus himself got off easy because he's immortal, but he brought a terrible fate on his daughter. But that isn't fair. It wasn't the little girl's fault. Grover hesitated. "Percy, children of the big three have powers greater than other half-bloods. They have a strong aura, a scent that attracts monsters. When Hades found out about the girl, he wasn't too happy about Zeus breaking his oath. Hades let the worst monsters out of Tartarus to torture Thalia. A satyr was assigned to be her keeper, and when she was 12, but there was nothing he could do. He tried to escort her there with a couple of other half-bloods she'd befriended. They almost made it, but they got all the way to the top of the hill." He pointed across to the valley to the pine tree where I'd fought off the Minotaur. All three kindly ones were after them along with a horde of hellhounds. They were about to overrun when Thalia told her satyrs to take the other two half-bloods to safety, where she'd held off monsters. She was wounded and tired, and she didn't want to live like a hunted animal. The satyr didn't want to leave her, but he couldn't change her mind, and he had to protect the others. So Thalia made her final stand alone at the top of the hill. As she died, Zeus took pity on her. He turned her into that pine tree. Her spirit still helps protect the borders of the valley. That's why the hill is called Half-Blood Hill. I stared at the pine trees in the distance. The story made me feel hollow and guilty too. A girl my age had sacrificed herself to save her friends. She had faced a whole army of monsters. Next to that, my victory over the Minotaur didn't seem like much. I wondered if I'd acted differently. Could I have saved my mother? "Grover," I said, "have heroes really gone on quests to the underworld?" "Sometimes," said Orpheus, Hercules, Houdini. "And they never returned somebody from the dead?" "No, never." Orpheus came close. "Percy, you're not seriously thinking." "No," I lied. "I was just wondering. So Satyr is always assigned to guard a demigod?" Grover studied me warily. I hadn't persuaded him that I'd really dropped the underworld idea. "Not always. We go undercover to a lot of schools. We try to sniff out the half-bloods who have the makings of great heroes. If we find one a very strong aura like a child of the big three, we alert Chiron. He tries to keep an eye on them since they would really cause huge problems. And you found me. Chiron said you thought I might be something special." Grover looked as if I just let him into a trap. "I didn't. Oh, listen, don't think like that. If you were, you'd never ever be out on a quest. And I'd never get my license. You're probably a child of Hermes, or maybe even one of the minor gods like Nemesis, the god of revenge. Don't worry, okay?" I got the idea he was reassuring himself more than me. That night after dinner, there was a lot of excitement, more excitement than usual. At last it was time for Capture the Flag. The plates were cleared, the concord had sounded, and we all stood at our tables. Campers yelled and cheered as Annabeth and the two of her siblings ran into the pavilion carrying a silk banner. It was about 10 feet long, glistening gray, and a painting of a barn owl on an olive tree. On the opposite side of the pavilion, Clarice and her buddies ran in with another banner of identical size but gaudy red, painted with a bloody spear and a boar's head. I turned to Luke and yelled over the noise. "Those are the flags?" "Yeah. Ares and Athena always lead the teams." "Not always," he said, "but often. So if other camp captures one, what do? Repaint the flag?" He grinned. "You'll see. First we have to get one." "Whose side are we on?" He gave me a sly look as if he knew something I didn't. The scar on his face made him look evil in the torchlight. "We've made a temporary alliance with Athena. Tonight we get the flag from Ares, and you are going to help." The teams were announced. Athena had made an alliance with Apollo and Hermes, the two biggest cabins. Apparently privileges had been traded. Shower times, chore schedules, and the best slots for activities in order to win support. Aries had been allied themselves and everybody else, Dionysus, Demeter, Aphrodite, and Hephaestus. From what I'd seen, Dionysus' kids were really good athletes, but there were only two of them. Demeter's kids had the edge with the nature skills and outdoor stuff, and they weren't very aggressive. Aphrodite's sons and daughters I wasn't too worried about. They mostly sat on the activity and checked their reflections in the lake and did their hair and gossip. Hephaestus' kids weren't pretty, and there were only four of them, but they all were big and early from working in the metal shop all day. That they might be a problem. That, of course, left Aries' cabin a dozen of the biggest, ugliest, meanest kids on Long Island, or anywhere else on the planet. Chiron hammered his hoof on the marble. Heroes, so you know the rules. The creek is the boundary line. The entire forest is fair game. All magic items are allowed. The banner must be prominently displayed and have no more than 2 guards. Prisoners may be disarmed, may not be bound or gagged. No killing or maiming is allowed. I will serve as a referee and the battlefield medic. Arm yourselves. He spread his hands, and the tables were suddenly covered with equipment, helmets, bronze swords, spears, oxide shields coated in metal. Whoa, I said, we're really supposed to use these? Luke looked at me as if I were crazy. Unless you want to be skewered by your friends in cabin 5. Here, Chiron. Thought these would fit. You'll be on border patrol. My shield was the size of an NBA backboard with a big caduceus in the middle. It weighed about 1,000,000 pounds. I could have snowboarded on it fine, but hoped nobody seriously expected me to run fast. My helmet, like all the helmets on Athena's side, had blue horsehair plume on top of it. Ares and their allies had red plumes. Annabeth yelled, "Blue team, forward!" We cheered and shook our swords and followed her down the path to the south woods. The red team yelled taunts as they headed off the north. I managed to catch up with Annabeth without tripping over my equipment. Hey, she kept marching. So what's the plan? I asked. Got any magic items you can loan me? Her hand drifted toward her pocket as if she were afraid I'd stolen something. Just watch Clarice's spear, she said. You don't want that thing touching you. Otherwise, don't worry. We'll take the banner from Ares. Has Luke given you your job? Border patrol, whatever that means. It sounds easy. Stand by the creek, keep the roads away, leave the rest to me. Athena always has a plan. She pushed ahead, leaving me in the dust. Okay, I mumbled. Glad you wanted me on your team. It was a warm, sticky night. The woods were dark with fireflies popping in and out of view. Annabelle stationed me to the next little creek that gurgled over some rocks. Then she and the rest of the team scattered into the trees. Standing there alone with my big blue feathered helmet and my huge shield, I felt like an idiot. The bronze sword, like all the swords I'd tried so far, seemed bouncing wrong. The leather grip pulled on my hand like a bowling ball. There was no way anyone would actually attack me. Would they? I mean, Olympus had to have liability issues, right? Far away the conchorn blew. I heard whoops and yells in the woods and clanking of metal kids fighting. The blue-plumed ally from Apollo raced past me like a deer, leaped through the creek, and disappeared into enemy territory. Great, I thought. I'll miss all the fun as usual. Then I heard a sound that sent a chill up my spine, a low canine growl. Somewhere close by, I raised my shield instinctively. I had the feeling something was stalking me. Then the growling stopped. I felt the presence retreating. On the other side of the creek, the underbrush exploded. 5 Ares warriors came yelling and screaming out of the dark. Cream the punk, Clarice screamed. Her ugly pig eyes glared through the slits of her helmet. She brandished a 5-foot-long spear and barbed metal tip flickering in the red light. Her siblings only had standard issue bronze sword. Not that that made me feel any better. They charged across the stream. There was no help in sight. I could run or I could defend myself against half the Ares cabin. I managed to sidestep the first kid swing, but these guys were not as stupid as the Minotaur. They surrounded me and Clarice thrust at me with her spear. My shield deflected the point, but I felt a painful tingling all over my body. My hair stood on end. My shield arm went numb, and the air burned. Electricity. Her stupid spear was electric. I fell back. Another Ares guy slammed onto me in the chest with the butt of his sword, and it hit the dirt. They could have kicked me into jelly, but they were too busy laughing. Give him a haircut, Clarice said. Grab his hair. I managed to get on my feet. I raised my sword, but Clarice slammed it aside with her spear as sparks flew. Now both my arms felt numb. Oh wow, Clarice said. I'm scared of this guy, really scared. The flag is that way, I told her. I wanted to sound angry, but I was afraid it didn't come on that way. Yeah, one of her siblings said. But see, we don't care about the flag. We care about the guy who made our cabin look stupid. You do that without my help, I told them. It probably wasn't the smartest thing to say. Two of them came at me. I backed up toward the creek, tried to raise my shield, but Grace was too fast. Her spear struck me in the ribs, as if I hadn't been wearing an armored breastplate. I would have been shish kebabbed, as if it was the electric point just about shocked my teeth out of my mouth. One of her cabin mates slashed his sword against my arm, leaving a good-sized cut. Seeing my own blood made me dizzy, warm and cold at the same time. No maiming, I managed to say. Oops, the guy said. Guess I lost my dessert privilege. He pushed me into the creek, and I landed with a splash. They all laughed. I figured as soon as they were through being amused, I would die. But then something happened. The water seemed to wake up my senses, as if I had been as if I just had a bag of my mom's double espresso jelly beans. Clarice and her cabin mates came to the creek to get me, but I stood to meet them. I knew what to do. I swung the flat of my sword against the first guy's head and knocked his helmet clean off. I hit him so hard you could see his eyes vibrating as he crumpled into the water. Ugly number 2, ugly number 3 came at me. I slammed one into the face with my shield and used my sword to shear off the other guy's horsehair plume. Both of them backed up quick. Ugly number 4 didn't really look anxious to attack. But Clarice kept coming, the point of her spear crackling with energy. As soon as she thrust, I caught the shaft between the edge of my shield and my sword, and it snapped off like a twig. Ah, she screamed, you idiot! You corpse breath worm! She probably would have said worse, but I smacked her between the eyes with the sword butt and sent her stumbling back down the creek. Then I heard yelling, elated screams, and I saw Luke racing towards the boundary line with the red team's banner lifted high. He was flanked by a couple of Hermes guys covering his retreat, and a few of Halls behind them fighting for Hephaestus' kids. The Ares folks got up, and Clarice muttered a dazed curse. A trick, he shouted. It was a trick. They staggered after Luke, but it was too late. Everybody converged on the creek as Luke ran across a friendly territory. Our side exploded into cheers. The red banner shimmered and turned to silver. The boar and the spears were replaced with huge caduceus, the symbol of the cabin 11. Everybody on the blue team picked up Luke and started carrying him around on their shoulders. Chiron cantered out the woods and blew the conch horn. The game was over. We'd won. I was about to join the celebrations when Annabeth's voice right next to me in the creek said, "Not bad, hero." I looked, but she wasn't there. Where the heck did you learn to fight like that? She asked. The air shimmered and she materialized, holding a Yankees baseball cap as if she'd taken it off her head. I felt myself getting angry. I was even fazed by the fact that she'd been invisible. You set me up, I said. You put me here because you knew Clarice would come after me, while you sent Luke around the flank. You had it all figured out. Annabeth shrugged. I told you, Athena always has a plan. A plan to get me pulverized. I came as fast as I could. I was about to jump in, but she shrugged. You didn't need my help. And she noticed my wound arm. How'd you do that? Sword cut, I said. What do you think? No, it was a sword cut. Look at it. The blood was gone. The huge cut had been there. There was a long white scratch, and even it was fading. As I watched, it turned into a small scar and disappeared. I don't get it, I said. Annabeth was thinking hard. She could almost see the gears turning. She looked down at my feet, then at Clarice's broken spear and said, Step out of the water, Percy. What? Just do it. I came out of the creek and immediately felt bone tired. My arms started to go numb again. My adrenaline rush left me, and I almost fell over, and Annabeth steadied me. Oh, stick, she cursed. This is not good. I assumed it would be Zeus. Before I could ask what she meant, I heard the canine growl again, but it was much closer than that before. A howl ripped through the forest. The campers cheering died instantly. Chiron shouted something in ancient Greek, which I would realize only later. I had understood it perfectly. Stand ready, my bow. Annabeth drew her sword. There on the rocks just above us was a black hound the size of a rhino with lava-red eyes and fangs like daggers. It was looking straight at me. Nobody moved except Annabeth, who yelled, "Percy, run!" She tried to step in front of me, but the hound was too fast. It leaped over her, an enormous shadow with teeth, and just as it hit me, I stumbled back and felt its razor-sharp claws ripping through my armor. There was a cascade of whacking black sounds, like 40 pieces of paper being ripped one after another. From the hound's neck sprouted a cluster of arrows. The monster fell dead at my feet. By some miracle, I was alive. I didn't want to look underneath the ruins of my shredded armor. My chest felt warm and wet. I knew I was badly cut. Another second, the monster would have turned me in 100 pounds of delicatessen meat. Chiron trotted up next to us, about O in his hand, his face grim. "The Immortales," Annabeth said. "That's a hellhound from the fields of punishment. They're not supposed to." "Someone summoned it, Chiron. Someone inside the camp." Luke came over, the banner in his hand forgotten, his moment of glory gone. Clarice yelled, "It's all Percy's fault. Percy summoned it." "Be quiet, child," Chiron told her. We watched the body of the hellhound melt into the shadows, soaking in the ground until it disappeared. "You're wounded," Annabeth told me. "Quick, Percy, get in the water." "I'm okay." "No, you're not." Chiron, watch this. I was too tired to argue. I stepped back into the creek, the whole camp gathering around me. Instantly, I felt better. I could feel the cuts on my chest closing up. Some of the campers gasped. "Look, I don't know why," I said, trying to apologize. "I'm sorry." But they weren't watching my wounds heal. They were staring at something above my head. "Percy," Annabeth said, pointing on. By the time I looked up, the sign was already fading, but I could still make out the hologram of green light, spinning and gleaming. A three-tipped spear, a trident. "Your father," Annabeth murmured. "This is really not good." "It is determined," Chiron announced. All around me, campers started kneeling, even Aries' cabin around, though they didn't look happy about it. "My father?" I asked, completely bewildered. "Poseidon," says Chiron, "Earthshaker, Stormbringer, father of horses, hail Percy's Jackson, son of the sea god."